Do forgive me, time to time I interrupt video. Sometimes I did it already on purpose even, in order files with my explanation would be not so long and easy operatable in your life. Next, guys, remind you what we have already done. First, it was a frame, completely empty, without any element besides all this empty, without cement, without forks, barrels. Next, we place it here, mounting standard on temporary supports and clamp it with temporary clamps like belts or some other clamps to the frame of jig mounting standard in its the very first position. Next step was attaching of jig reference platform to the reference platform of mounting standard, joining them temporarily with special high quality pin. And next it was clamping process of reference platform of jig to the reference platform of mounting standard. It was permanent joining to the frame, as you'd like, whether with cement or with pins and screws or bolts. Don't forget that in this case, in your technological process, will be different tooling. What is next? Next, we are working with locating and mounting of locators of holes, GBH holes, locators of hinges. First, locate fork type locators of jig at their gauge of mounting standard by GBH in gauge of mounting standard and surface now in gauge of mounting standard. Next, clamp it. Located means align holes, no? At least holes and surfaces. Next, clamp it. Clamp it, it means that you're inserting here either technological screw and nut or special high quality pin. Clamp it and make permanent joint of locator of this type to the frame of the jig, to this place. Repeat it for second locator. Next, locate jigging plate at the mounting standard gauge by what? By base hole, by this one, by that one. Next, clamp it with technological pins or technological screws. Clamp jigging plate to the mounting standard gauge. And finally, do a permanent joint of jigging plate to the frame of assembly jig via cement or using the nuts and pins, or bolts, nuts and pins, depends on you. Finally, what do we have? We have already the jig with locators of junctions, but we still have not located locators of contour. What are locators of contours? Remind you, those things, these silver-like things, they are locator of contours. Moreover, as we have agreed before, locators of contours, they are not even finished yet. May you imagine? So first task for us is to decide how we're going to finish them. How we may finish them. Now let's imagine that somehow we place it here in the jig. Somehow already place it. Next, in order to finish this contour, we are going to use special cement once again. Oh, here it's even scratched a bit by nails of our students. Not visible, but normally, I hope better visible. It's so-called polymer cement. It's epoxy resin with some additions, a compound also, you know. Locator itself, it may be done of, it may be made of wood, it may be made of aluminum alloys, depends on how much expensive manufacturing you have. And finishing of this contour is fulfilled immediately during mounting of jig, usually, if we use this method of mounting. How? We placed it somehow in this position, but it still have gap, you see. All over this contour, it has a gap. with respect to the template of the mounting standard. What is next? You need to clamp it also either to the frame of assembly jig permanently or to the mounting standard temporarily. And next, your task is to fill it with cement. Yes, but the cement may flow out a bit. In order to prevent it, you need to place here so-called technological plates. I can't show it in some another way except of my whole hand, with my palms. Do imagine that you place it here, couple of plates, and fix it them both on locator and on the mounting standard. These plates cover all the clearance that you have to fill, and these plates also, they have holes, something similar. Oh, forgive me, it's difficult to operate even with hand, watching to the screen instead of real life objects. Also, it has special holes, and through these special holes, you are going to fill it with this epoxy resin. No, in general, it looks like this. And after epoxy resin is frozen in some minutes, you may remove these plates, and locator seems like it's finished. You may leave it in this position, better of course leave it in this position. You may open it. By the word, it was epoxy resin. It made adhesive joint here, yes, but maybe it's also made adhesive joint to the mounting standard. Yes, it's made. If we forget to cover mounting standard preliminary with special anti-adhesive material, it may be a technical Vaseline, it may be any oil, mineral oil usually, or it may be a special film, and this film protecting mounting standard, preventing adhesion of epoxy resin to the mounting standard instead of adhesion to locator. Now let's repeat it in more formal way. I said we need to place locator and fix it somehow to the frame of jig, for instance. How we may do it? I hope you do remember these barrels were empty, and what we do? We place locator here first. Align locator with the template. Clamp it to the template somehow with temporary screw clamps. Hang fork type connector, it's called connector, this fork, or eye bolt you may call it if you'd like. In Western countries it's more probably called eye bolt. You may call this fork type connector, you may call it eye bolt connector, but do use the same name each time, please. Hang connector onto the hole, it's so-called mounting hole and mounting hole. Align these holes in connector and in locator, clamp it with the pin as we did before, where the pin has disappeared. Here is. And repeat the same procedure. Clamp pin and join connector permanently to assembly jig. So in previous cases, it was locate, attach, join, locate, clamp, join, attach, locate by attaching, clamp in this position and join to the jig. Attach, locate, clamp in this position, join to assembly jig frame. Attach to the mounting standard, clamp by base hole in this case, and make a join to the assembly jig. In case of locators of contour, procedure is broken, you see, upside down. First, we join finally locator in some predetermined position to frame of assembly jig, and next, we are going really to locate it. Not to locate, but finish its contour. Once again, place locator in a jig approximately to mounting standard surface, to the place which you need to repeat. Next, hang, clamp it onto mounting standard. Hang I-type connector to locator of jig. Clamp it with pin. Make permanent joint to assembly jig. and wait for 15 minutes if it comes about cement. It means wait exactly for this locator which we are working with, but until it's continue to freeze, we may work already with next locator, next, and so on. In contrary to what we have if we use screws. If you use screws and pins, you are permanently busy. You are dealing with drilling, with countersinking, and so on, and your hands are not empty. You can't work next until you didn't finish this. In this case, you did something and waiting, but it doesn't mean that you are not working at this time. You may work with the next one. Так, next. After you did it, what is next? Oil mounting standard, preliminary, better, of course. Oil mounting standard to protect it. Oil, it means grease it, not oil maybe to say, grease. Grease the surface of mounting standard templates or protect it with film to prevent adhesion to locator of contour. Attach from both of sides of template of mounting contour technological plates with holes. Clamp them. Next, through the holes in technological plates, fill the special compound which is supposed to repeat the contour, like you see. Instead of empty plates, we will have the whole contour coinciding to the contour of mounting standard. Fill it with special cement, wait 15 minutes, remove the technological plates. Repeat for all another locators. Next, after you did it, what is the last stage of your work? You need open all the, at least one side, locators of contours, remove them, open them. No, what does it mean open? You have seen. I'm just opening the side in order you may remove something from jig. Next, remove clamps from gauges and locators of junctions. And here also don't forget. Remove pins or another clamps from reference platforms. And what we did it all for? To remove mounting standard from jig. One more note, let it be, to this process. Do you imagine that we place it the very first time, as I said, we place it mounting standard onto reference platforms, future reference platforms of jigs, that one. And do you imagine that we have used cement? Cement has time of freezing 15 minutes, but time of final setting, including all the sizes, it's around 3 days. And what is this important note? If you place it here, mounting standard, and join it reference platforms with cement, you have to wait 3 days after this procedure in order to start next activity, like making the locators of contours, locators of junctions, whatsoever. If it comes about cement here, you should wait for 3 days for final setting of the cement. Next, you are removing temporary supports, and so on and so forth. If you use screws and pins in this joint, no need to wait. You just working. After you have finished this place, you may continue with mounting standard. Well, actually, we have already assembled our jig. Once again, in very large steps. What we did? Inside of empty frame, do place mounting standard, this red one. To the mounting standard, legs with reference platform. Attach reference platform of jig, clamp to the mounting standard, and now create permanent joint to the assembly jig of these platforms. Once again, remind you, these platforms are not necessary for first time. They are necessary to find position of mounting standard for second time, and all other times you're going to bring it here, for instance, to check the jig. Next step, locate or attach to the gauge of mounting standard the junction locator, clamp it with technological fasteners, and join junction locator to the frame of jig. When it was fork type locator, locating was on the GBH hole and surfaces. When it was jigging plate, locating was on base hole and surface of the gauge. What is next? Next is place non-finished locator of contour to the mounting standard and clamp it temporarily. Next, hang fork type locators or eye bolts to locator of contour, clamp it with pins, and make permanent joint of connector, locator in turn, to the frame of assembly jig. After you did it, you may continue finalizing of your locators. How? Attach grease mounting standard to protect it against adhesion. Attach technological plates from both of sides of the silver color locator. Clamp technological plates to locator. Fill the clearance, the gap between locator. Where is my pen? Between locator and between mounting standard. Fill it with cement. Wait for 15 minutes, remove technological plates, continue the work with the next locator until you finish all the locators. What is finally? After you have finished everything, you need to open one side of the jig, at least one side of the jig, remove pins and open locators. You need to remove temporary clamps from locators of junctions, and you need to remove temporary clamps from reference platforms. What for? Remove mounting standard from assembly jig. Assembly jig is ready to start work.